Okay, welcome back to Bounce Around Charleston. We just talked about the National Congress of Black Churches and the conference that's coming to Charleston in December, talking about anger to answers. And now standing here with me is attorney Eduardo Curry. He's the attorney for Keith Lamont Scott, a victim out of Charlotte, North Carolina. Another high-profile case in our society. Welcome to Bounce Around Charleston.
Thank you very much, Reverend Miller.
We brought you here today to talk about high-profile cases and how to handle them and what happens in the community with the exploding of emotions. And as the attorney in the Keith Lamont Scott case, how is that going?
Well, it's going very well, actually. We're having an opportunity that we're going to meet with the prosecutor from the criminal side. As you know, from the civil side, it takes a while as you develop your case and as you apprehend thoughts and use them within your case. The family is obviously anxious to meet with the prosecutor and with the state and see whether or not any charges will be filed.
Now, right now, Attorney Curry, we have a lot of situations happening in our community where they're talking about the African-American male being shot down.
Yes.
And, oh my God, emotions are just exploding because many times they feel as though it's not a fair shake on the African-American male. What do you think about it?
Well, I think both ways. First of all, that we have to have a sense of responsibility in our community as citizens and as law enforcement. I think that there needs to be some race sensitivity training, de-escalation of force training. What I mean by de-escalation of force is that deadly force is the ultimate force to be used in a case. And so there are other things that can be done, everything from the use of tasers to particularly the use of baton or spray or maybe handcuffs or even verbal commands. And so I think that many of our police department and law enforcement officials are going to have to go back and revisit their policies and procedures to make sure that the people on the streets, the boots in the street, are actually following along those policies and procedures. For example, they have policies and procedures about the use of body cams.
Okay.
But we're now hearing where officers in other cases have turned off their body cams before coming into conflict with alleged assailants.
Okay.
That's a violation of public policy and a violation of police procedure.
Because that camera should stay on at all times.
It should stay on at all times. From the point they're activated, it should stay on so that it gives it an additional recordation about what is occurring in the conflict between the law enforcement and the assailant, alleged assailant.
I noticed, though, your case is a little different from the other cases because it's the white officer versus the black male. In this case, I noticed it's a black officer that we're dealing with also with the prosecution right now. So where does that take us? Well,
it obviously defies the traditional characteristics that we normally have white on black. This is a black on black situation. And certainly, you know, all of the factors have not come out. Where the positioning of that officer was, the location of the shots, where they occurred, whether or not there was a gun in Keith Lamont Scott's hand. Some people say yes, some have said no. Whether or not the film validates that. And there was a narrative that the police at the Charlotte, Mecklenburg police, the actual chief of police, he laid a narrative out. That narrative is now in stone. And so as we look at factors and facts, and we look at where was this police officer when this occurred? Was he a Johnny-come-lately? If you look at the case specifically, without being too much in detail, the white officers that were in front of Mr. Scott did not fire.
We ask this question all the time. Are police officers taught in their training when to shoot in a situation?
I would hope so, Reverend Miller. Yes, they are. Part of their academy training is the use of deadly force. And the use of deadly force is something that has to be contemplated in a way whether or not the law enforcement officer is in danger or whether or not the person who's the alleged assailant has created danger for someone else. that danger has to rise to the level where that officer has to make a decision based on his or her training and professionalism. Do I use deadly force to either defend myself or to defend others? And when you look at the factors, you have to be very clear about it, because you can't unring the bell.
Okay.
Once that projectile leaves that muzzle, it's actually going to kill.
What makes a case a high-profile case?
The interest of the public. That's very interesting.
I like that.
The interest of the public. People get killed every day. Folks have auto accidents every day.
Every day.
But what happens is, when you look at factors, the hungriness of the public to know what facts were there that caused this calamity or this interaction. And when the public starts to clamor about it, then the media gets involved. And as you know, the media, you would think from the high road, is about transparency and wanting to have some accuracy in the reporting of the facts. And so there it starts, the answers and the questions that are asked as a result of those answers. And so it becomes high profile. People want to know.
Okay, we're going to take a break. And we've just been talking about anger to answers with the National Black Conference. But when we come back, I want you to talk about the explosion of the community in Charlotte and find out what we can do to help that situation.
I would love to.
We'll be right back after this break. Welcome back to Bounce Around Charleston. Standing here with me, attorney Eduardo Curry, attorney for Keith Lamont Scott and his family with the case in Charlotte, North Carolina, remembering that he was shot to death soon after exiting his car parked near his home on September the 20th. Police officers said they saw him holding a gun, and the Scott's family has maintained that he was unarmed. Attorney Curry, the citizens of Charlotte exploded. Rioting, protesting, it was on CNN, local news, all the channels covered it, national TV, Charlotte was in the news.
That's right.
What caused that?
Part of what caused that is the inherent distrust of the public. We've been trained that law enforcement and the police are supposed to be our protectors. And what occurred in Charlotte has been part of a long-running distrust. You know, young black male, he's a college football player. Allegedly, they say that he was breaking in houses. Police pull up, he runs to them. They say that they're fearful for their life. They shoot him. And the public is just like, it turns out they were wrong. And so what has happened is now across America, and we had some of this here in Charleston with the Slager case, the inherent distrust of the public, especially when they find out that the narrative that law enforcement gives is not consistent with the facts.
Now, you are a part of this case, so you are going to have to defend the Scott's family, and they're maintaining that our son, our friend, our brother, our cousin was unarmed.
Some of the factors that are going to go into play is that North Carolina is an open carry state. If I may digress for a moment, an open carry state says you have a right, if you have a license, to carry a gun openly, a handgun openly. Another part of the case is obviously whether or not Mr. Scott actually was doing what they said he was doing in order to create probable cause. And as you know, probable cause is, was a crime committed, and was this person in fact a part of the commission of the crime? And so even though we're the plaintiffs and we have the burden of going forward and the burden of persuasion, we have to look at the facts and be honest, be transparent, have some accuracy, because we owe the community the trust of, as lawyers, finding out what really happened, seeking the truth.
So what do you all do to calm the people down?
Well, first of all, we got to tell them the fight is not going to be in the street only. The fight always has to be in the court and in the administrative rooms of our police departments, where their policies and procedures are going to have to be enforced. And so first of all, we don't try our case in the media. We want to be accurate and transparent to the media, but you can't try your case there. That's irresponsible. As lawyers, we have ethics. On the same token, when we release information, it's because the reluctance of a law enforcement department to come clean, to be accurate, to be transparent to the public of which it serves.
Not to cover up anything.
Not to cover up anything, and to show this is what we did. It was a lawful shoot. It was a lawful stop. We had probable cause, and these things actually occurred. When law enforcement happens to be reluctant, it then activates the distrust of the community again.
And as we almost come to a close, I've got to ask you this question. So, coming to the close of the case, you're sitting there wondering, how will the jury's verdict turn out?
Well, what we hope is that prior to having to go to court, that this matter could be resolved for a man who had a 20-year covenant relationship with his wife and 7 children. And so to drag them through a lengthy trial may not be in the best interest of this family. We won't know until we see what the Charlotte-Mecklenburg Police Department will do, and the city of Charlotte and its mayor.
Well, apparently you are somebody to reckon with, that they called you to Charlotte to come and be a part of what we are calling a high-profile case.
And I thank all the people who think that about me. We're trying to do our best to make sure we represent the legal profession, that we represent this family, and that we seek the truth.
Okay, let us not forget, Keith Lamont Scott was shot to death soon after exiting his car parked near his home on September 20th. Police officers had seen him holding a gun. And again, Scott's family has maintained that he was unarmed. We're waiting to hear the verdict.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
On Bounce Around Charleston. We'll be right back after this break.